Well, welcome to the Speak with People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz. I'm so excited that you are joining us today. Here at Speak with People, we believe that healthy communication is oxygen for your relationships and your leadership. So whether you communicate one-on-one, to a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we hope that our time today inspires you to breathe life with your communication into your world. So here's a question for you. Where do you turn for help, support, and encouragement to share ideas about your communication or your leadership? Well, just a little pitch. This is why the Speak with People community group exists. It's a growing, fun, supportive community where leaders just like you, like me, we all come together to work on becoming healthier and more effective communicators. So just head to facebook.com/groups/speak with people and join that group today. Well, I'm so excited to dive into today's podcast. We're going to talk a lot about communicating with ourselves, making the choice to be positive with our self-talk. So do you ever talk to yourself? Have you ever wondered, how do I talk to myself? Are there conversations and the words that you speak to yourself that stand out? Are they positive? Are they negative? We're going to discover how the words we choose to address ourselves with can significantly impact our choices. How are our choices held back? How are our decisions, our leadership skills? And so hopefully this time we'll challenge your preconceptions. We'll have fun exploring new territories and really just challenge you to transform some of your thinking. Well, I am honored today to introduce today's guest. She's just a fantastic and amazing leader, former TV executive, built an incredible executive coaching business, worked with just thousands of incredible C-suite and executive leaders. She's the author of The Choice Is Yours. I've really enjoyed going through this book. We're going to give away a few of the copies in the Speak with People Facebook group, and I'm excited to have her on the Speak with People podcast today. Welcome to the podcast, Stef Ziev.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Absolutely. Just a little funny story as we begin. Offline, I always try to ask the guests for pronunciation of their names to make sure I don't get that wrong. And I didn't this time. And so one of the things we love about the Speak with People podcast is we kind of roll with it. And so thank you. Like just a minute ago, I pronounced Stef's name a little bit incorrectly. And so we kind of redid that part. And I love that about communication, that we're able to have those conversations and make sure that we do it right. I love that.
Me too.
I'm
all about it.
Well, hey, could you tell us just a little bit more about your story, who you are, what you do, so our audience and our listeners can get a feel for who you are?
Sure. So I actually like to say that I am a camp counselor at heart. Like I started my life going to summer camp when I was 7 years old. And then I went to my sleepaway camp when I was 10. And I was there until I was 24 years old. So during that time that I was at camp, I held every position possible up to the assistant director of the summer camp. So I always felt like I had this inner camp counselor in me, and that's kind of the essence of who I am. And so, but I also always wanted to be Phil Donahue, and I'm really dating myself there, but Phil Donahue was like pre-Oprah and back in the day when talk shows were a thing, and I wanted to be a talk show host. But I also really I grew up with Free to Be You and Me, which was by Marlo Thomas and Friends. And this was kind of like all about the equality of men and women, which now today sounds archaic, but it's true. I mean, it doesn't really in the scheme of men and women in terms of, money and whatever, but in terms of gender, I guess, in terms of there's so many more levels and layers of that realm. So, but the point is that I always say if Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue had a child, I would be it. Now, it turns out that Marlo Thomas and Phil Donahue did get married, ironically, and so I still consider myself their unofficial love child. But I did want to be a talk show host, and I also really loved television, and I loved the idea of having a mission. And so I started my career actually after I was the assistant director of my summer camp, where I was a 24-year-old leader. I then left that job and traveled aimlessly across the country for about 3.5 months, and I landed in Los Angeles where I knew one person. And then
Wow.
then I was a
Wow.
production assistant there, and I got into the world there. And then I was only going to stay for 6 months. And 6 years later, I'm like, oh my Lordy, there are no seasons here. I got to go. So I left with no job, and I moved to New York 2 months before September 11th happened with,
Wow.
the world changed.
Yep.
I decided to stay. And so I became the vice president of development at Oxygen, at the network Oxygen,
Oh, wow.
which at the time was not, now it's a crime network. And at the time it was a women's network. And while I was there, well, I would say before going to New York, I actually started a master's in spiritual psychology. It was called. I started this amazing program, which was all about kind of looking at thyself. It was kind of like a
Hmm.
personal and professional development workshop on steroids, and it was a
Wow.
master's program. So I had that, and then I moved to New York. I became the vice president of development at Oxygen, and as much as I loved my job and I loved my team and I loved leading and I loved kind of being my version of a camp counselor there, I kind of I had a moment where I really kind of had that one of those moments of like, if I could do anything, I would be a personal development workshop
Hmm.
leader, like a facilitator. And I
Yep.
had someone say to me, well, why don't you be a life coach? And I was like, I don't know what that is. It was 2006 when I
Oh,
heard this.
wow.
So it was kind of like pre the, the influx
Yep.
of this career path. And so while I was still a vice president at this network, I ended up going and getting certified on the side. And while I was, so I was certified on November 12th of '07, and I was let go with a severance because NBC ended up buying Oxygen, and I had this opportunity to leave. So I left with the severance on November 28th. And to be perfectly honest, it was I look back at that choice and I question it
Hmm.
often, and I say, because the road to success was rocky and many, many highs and many, many lows. And 3 years into that experience of leaving, I was 37, about to be 38 when I left. And 3 years later, I failed miserably, and I found
Hmm.
myself turning 41 on my father's sofa,
Ugh.
and then had to go back to the entertainment industry to kind of like pick up the pieces. And then I got fired again, and I not again. I got fired from
Hmm.
the job I had, and then I got on the Today Show as a coach, and kind of everything thankfully took off from there. So,
Wow.
but lots to read about the more of those blank. We can fill in many, many more blanks in the introduction chapter in
Yes.
my book, which
Yes.
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but you can say what it's called.
Yes. So you're telling me though, because I know we have a good amount of entrepreneurs that listen. Um, your journey on this, it wasn't just automatically all incredible and everything up to the right.
No, no, it was not. No, it
Yeah.
was not.
It
I
is.
had no idea what I was doing. I went
Yep.
into it for like, oh, I want to serve and I want to be of support and I want to help people. And it's like, that is excellent. And that is not a business plan. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's boy, you know, I say it in both a kind of judgy way, but then it's not judgy because I'm in that same boat. But when I launch Speak with People, I just never anticipated how incredibly hard it is to start something on your own and get momentum. And then I think of, I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm here with the generations, and then I think of our Gen Zers now, who I hear things like, well, I've been here at my job for 3 months, and why am I not a VP? you know,
I know.
and I
Gone are the days of hunger. Gone are
right,
the days of like, I will get your coffee and I
right,
will, clean up your mess and get your dry cleaning. Yes.
yeah,
No, it's
pay
a
your
very
dues is
different
really
world.
not a is not a thing. Okay, so you referenced the first chapter of the book. I love the first chapter, and one of the things that you said though, before we kind of hone in on that, you talked about how you are a people collector and a people connector. I love that. Could you just what how do you define a people collector and a people connector?
I think my innate way of being in the world is that I connect. I am very curious. I like to talk to people. I will find out everything about them. I without even thinking, I immediately dive into any conversation to find out where I'm connected to them, right? So
Mm,
that's the connector part of me. But the collector is that I just realized that I have been over the years, like I just had before the pandemic, I on February 29th of 2020, I actually had a big party for my 50th birthday party,
mm,
and I had 115 people there and the people who were there were my first friend, like one of my best friends that I met when I was 7, up until people that I met like within the past year.
wow.
So I feel like I have, when I say people collector, I mean I'm someone who meets people, I connect deeply, and I stay in touch.
Mm,
And I do that innately. And I do that with business people. I do that with personal people. I do that with family. I'm very much the glue in my group friend in my and I have many, many, many groups
yep.
of friends from all parts of my life, and that I really stay connected with. And it's innate. It's not even something I feel like, it doesn't feel like I have to. It doesn't feel like a strain on me. It's a very natural way of my being.
Yeah. Yeah. So what advice, I'm just going to go off of that a little bit because I think you just gave us like some incredible gold, especially, as we're trying to build a platform or build connections or networks. What advice would you give the leader who's going, okay, I don't have anybody to connect with? How do I even start with some of that connecting? This is just fascinating. I would love some of your thoughts here.
Well, can I ask you something?
Sure.
So tell me a little bit more about, like, give me an example of where that might be coming from, if you don't mind, like in your own life. Are you struggling to connect or have people? It's easier for me if I
Yeah.
don't just give blanket advice, but if there's
Yeah.
something very specific that maybe is relatable to your audience as
Yeah.
well. I can answer the general question, but I'm just curious to know from where that question comes.
Yeah. So in my own life, I resonate deeply with what you just said.
Okay.
I love that. So you and I we're tracking, but I coach some leaders who, they'll say things like, well, I'm not good with people, you are, or I'm not good around groups of people, or I don't even know where to start. How do I, connect with somebody, let alone connect deeply with them? So that's kind of where I was coming at it from that end,
Okay.
with some folks. So
That's really helpful. Thank
yeah.
you. So, what I would say based on that example is that it does start with a belief. It
Mm,
starts with a story that you're telling yourself, right? It starts with, and again, I think that there's a really good opportunity here for anyone listening, if this is resonating, to think about what are the stories that I tell myself about my entrepreneurial life, about myself as a people collector or a people connector.
mm,
Is there something in the way already that might be stopping you from being more open to just understanding how you already do connect, like
wow.
how you, Jason, connect, how I connect might be different than how someone else connects. So I would say, like, find your innate way of connection. It might be going to a meetup group, it might be joining something like BNI, if that
Mm,
still exists, like
yep.
business networking.
Yep. Sure
I
does.
forget what the I is. And like, so find whatever feels innate for you. It might be that you ask people, that you're going on all these maybe you're just setting up a bunch of coffees with a bunch of people and asking them, can you introduce me to two or three more people, and maybe
Mm,
that's the way in which you connect. But whatever the action is that you choose to take, the opportunity before you even take that action is to really be conscious of what your intention is, what you want to vision, what you want to create, and allow that to dictate play. Because so often unconsciously we might be running a story that says, who am I to,
mm.
or I'm not enough, or no one's interested in connecting with me. And that is the stuff that gets to be altered, shifted, transformed in service to your highest and best going forward.
Oh my goodness. I just love that. I love that. I mean, I have been a connector, I think, for many, many years, but even the sitting down with someone over coffee and asking them, who are two and three people that I mean, I love that. That is absolute gold and specifically can help younger leaders or leaders who are just maybe there's this wall of fear, stopping
Yeah.
them from going, I don't know if I can connect with anybody. I love that. That's just
Yeah.
fantastic.
And I think it's very personal, like the way in which, like, my sister's an introvert, right? I'm an extrovert. The way my sister connects is very different than the way I connect. So again, it's about, like, know thyself, check in with yourself, say what lights me up, like what are scenarios that lights me up, like is it the one-on-one, is it the bigger meetup groups, is the networking opportunities, do you do you, boo boo.
I love that. I love that. So, kind of keeping going, with your book, I was thinking about when it does come to choices, our own personal choices, the choices that we make. It feels like sometimes, I could be way off here, but it feels like sometimes a lot of us, we self sabotage at times, and we may know the best choice is out there. We may see it in front of us, but maybe there's too much fear. Maybe we're keep waiting for someone to want to make it for us. Why do you think sometimes we do that self-sabotage, or we don't make the best choice or run after it? I would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, okay, so the way I would answer that is in chapter 4 of my book, um, I talk about, it's called Who's Sitting at the Head of Your Table.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And if you think about right now, think about a dining room table, and that we all have this inner community, let's say. And instead of it being family and friends sitting around this table, think about it as different parts of ourselves that's sitting around the table. So all of us have some basic parts. We have love and fear, to your point. We have doubt and confidence. We have happiness and sadness. And we have different parts like the imposter or the not enough, or we might have the perfectionist.
Yep.
Me, I have that. Um, is there a part that you have, Jason, that you would add to this table?
Oh, you may have already said it. Sometimes I think I kind of live too much in the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, I don't. Am I really invited to this table? I'm
Yeah,
not. I'm
right.
not good
Okay.
enough. That's self doubt. Yeah.
Totally, self-doubt. So if you think about, all these parts are all around the table all the time, and there's probably many more, right? But the question is always, who's sitting at the head of the table?
Mm,
And when we ask that question, so if self-doubt is sitting at the head of the table, or the imposter, or who am I to, and not enough, that is going to actually impact our choices consciously and unconsciously,
wow.
so that when we're choosing maybe that which is not, quote, best for us, we get to ask, what part of us is sitting at the head of the table, who's the authority in that moment, i.e., who's the author. Inside the word authority is author. And
Yep.
then author, the part of us that's sitting at the head of the table as the authority, is authoring a story that we're telling about ourselves that may or may not be fully accurate. So if the imposter is sitting at the head of the table, and that's the part that's in charge, and that's the part that we're now giving the pen to author our
Wow.
choices, to author our story, that's what's having the impact that may not be what the highest and best for us really wants.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's an opportunity always. This is like the first step in any of this, is to take inventory, and is to really understand who's sitting at the head of my table. Like, I always say, like, if you want to know what you want, look at what you have. And if you say you want to have a successful business but your business is failing, that's not a blame or shame game. That's I'm not suggesting blame or shame. I'm suggesting take inventory. So go, okay, what
Mm,
part of me is maybe stopping myself? What story am I telling myself? Like where are my fingerprints, consciously or unconsciously, on these results that I'm creating? Because the truth is that we think that when we have the thing, if we have the successful business, if we have the speaking gig, if we have the relationship that we want, if we have the connections that we're seeking, then we'll be confident, then we'll be happy,
right.
then we'll be successful. But the opposite is true. It starts with, who are we being? Who are we being? Are we being confident,
Yeah.
or are we being self-doubting? And the choice is yours, and either choice is dictating a result. So that's really the thing, that that's where we get to be like, stop, look, and listen, right? Stop right
Yep.
now, look and see what you have, and listen to yourself about like what are the stories you're telling yourself that's creating these results. And if they're aligned, amen, keep going. And if they're not, what do you want? What's a different choice you can make to be more aligned with that which you want to create versus that which you do not?
Wow. Well, I feel like you just gave us a master class right there because as a young business owner and someone trying to get something off the ground, I'm like, oh my goodness, my table is not set up very well right now. And
Right.
so,
And again, by the way, inside of this, it's never about this. Like I encourage everybody, you too, to not don't be in a blame or shame game.
yeah,
That's just going to perpetuate more blame
right.
and shame. The opportunity, I think of it like you're observing without judgment. So it's like if I'm looking at my hand
Oh,
over here and I keep a distance from it, right? So I'm looking at my hand now and I'm going, oh, that's so interesting. My hand is here and I see a ring on it and I see some lines and I have, 5 fingers and well, I have 4 fingers and a thumb. And I'm just like observing it without judgment. That's the same way that we can observe without judgment what part of us is sitting at the head of the table.
yep.
And it's only when we then name it that we can tame it. Like when we name things, then it takes some of the edge off, it takes some of the energy off. And then once we name it and tame it, we can reframe it or change it. And that's our opportunity
That's
right
when it
there.
gets, yeah, because it seems like, I mean, so many of us are held back by this negative self communication, negative self talk. I mean, we talk ourselves out
Yeah.
of so many things, and even some of these exercises, even if we did them, daily. I remember, so, I love the beginning of your book, the Tony Robbins story. And, I've never been to one of his things. I almost snuck in once, and then I was, then the little voice said, no, you can't sneak in. But I do remember him talking once. I heard a clip on YouTube or whatever about just, first thing in the morning, do a gratitude list. And so, I started doing that years ago just to get over those negative voices. That's like, oh, you don't have enough. Oh, you're not enough. What have you learned or what encouragement would you give to leaders when that negative, talk does come? Because a lot of times that negative talk are voices from wherever, so I hear some people
Yeah.
call them demons or, but then we join in on it and we remind ourselves, oh yeah, you didn't do that right. Like just what you talked about, the blame or shame. So how do we get to a place where, we stop with that, we eradicate it from our lives and we, bring in this positive or healthy self-talk so we're able to move forward?
I don't think it's about eradicating anything because I don't think that those parts are going away.
Okay.
So I think it's about ultimately integrating those parts. And I think about it like I'm not a parent, but I'm an auntie.
Yeah.
And and I'm a godmother. And I think about kids, right? And it's like when kids are having a moment where they're either angry or acting out or feeling sad or not feeling enough or they're scared, how's a healthy adult going to be with the kid?
Yep.
Like they're not going to eradicate that. They're not going to be like, okay, that's enough for you, and throw them out the window, right? So the opportunity is to really be gentle and listen to them. I think that part of this is it's not about squashing these voices. It's actually about giving them voice in some way, because the more you give them voice, the more you can listen and hear, and then that's where the integration comes in, right? Because it's about enfolding them. If you think about it, like if you think about them like they really are little kids, and if you want to just like give them a hug, and it's like the healthy adult can take over, be like, I got you. You are enough. I know you don't feel it, but like I'm gonna take over as a healthy adult right now, and start to put this confidence forth, but you're safe and I'm going to hold on to you, or I'm going to send you to the kids table so you can have a break and go
Yeah.
color and relax. Because you think about those parts I think they've been protectors in some way, right? They're not bad or wrong. They think they're protecting us from something. But the choice is, am I willing to say thank you for your service, and I'm going to let you go to the kids table, and I'm going to take the risk to be vulnerable and be confident and put myself out there. And I think this is, first of all, this is not a one and done thing. Everything that I talk about in the book and everything that I'm saying now, these are not magic bullets. This
Right.
is the work. This is the opportunity for growth. This does take a lot of consciousness. It takes
Yep.
it takes it takes a lot of conscious choice to make this so, and it's repetitive. So in the beginning, your question about like how do we do this is through repetition. So one of the things that I suggest is that you set an alarm on your phone to go off, or a reminder, however you can interrupt yourself throughout the day, every 2 to 4 hours, and just with a little reminder that might say who's sitting at the head of the table, or
Mm.
observe without judgment right now what's occurring in your surroundings, whatever that little indicator light is, or whatever that way is that you can kind of stop whatever hijacking might be going on and just become aware of what's happening. Then you can make a different choice if
Mm.
you need to. And sometimes the choice might be like, I had an experience when I was writing, ironically, when I was writing the chapter about who's sitting at the head of the table. I was so cognizant at one point that perfection was sitting at the head of my table.
Mm.
I just could not get over her. She was just there. And she was like full on holding on to the head of the table. And I finally acknowledged it. I said, okay, like, what is this angsty energy within me? And why can't I get past this one sentence? And I recognized, oh, I like stopped. I turned. Perfection is sitting at the head of the table. And
Wow.
you know what? In that moment, I chose to keep her there,
Mm.
but naming her did not like allowed me to be with her in a different way. Now, could I have put her at the head at the kids table and then brought in like peace or whatever? Maybe. But I didn't. I knew I was still in my perfection. I knew I wasn't happy about what I
Yeah.
was writing. I knew I wanted something else. And instead of pushing against this and rebelling or feeling the resistance to what was occurring, I allowed it. And that actually, in some way, maybe she did dissipate. Maybe she did go to the kids table, because I allowed more peace and ease in that moment.
Mm.
So maybe she sat next to peace and ease. Maybe peace and ease came in and sat next to perfection, and then I was able to write the sentence. So I don't know,
Wow.
but it's a practice. It's a practice, and
Yeah.
there's progress and never perfection. This
Right.
is not magic. It is a practice that I invite people to use, and to use with their teams and themselves, and yeah, and each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like what you said there. It's a practice because so often, even if you're a young leader or an older leader, a more seasoned, maybe leader with gray hair, you still get into that habit or that thought process sometimes of like, I want it tomorrow, instead of like, no, every day I need to practice this. I need to put in the time to practice. Are there any essential ingredients, in practicing some of that healthy self-talk that you found to be successful as you in your life or as you coach, your clients?
I really am adamant about language. I
Mm.
really think it's important. I changing my shoulds and my have tos to choose tos and want tos has
Oh.
changed my life, and it's changed my clients' lives. And it's a seemingly simple shift. I can't tell you how many times a day I hear people say, "It's so hard. This is so
Mm.
hard. This is hard. This is hard." They could be talking about like, you know, making a bed, and it's like,
Right.
it's just hard to make my bed. Is it really okay? Well, that's a story, and that's a choice to tell that kind of a story.
Right.
It's just as easy to say, it's so easy to make my bed. And
Mm.
then let that be the leader that follows you to make the bed. It's
Yep.
like our language dictates our action. Our language dictates our life. If we say I instead of saying I should go to the gym, if you say I choose to go to the gym, that's a very different energy shift.
Mm.
It's a one word, but it
Yeah.
changes the energy. I should not, eat that ice cream. I want to eat that ice cream. I'm going to choose to eat that ice cream. Then suddenly it's like an enjoyable experience versus a shaming,
Right.
you know, versus a shaming experience.
Yep.
I choose to be an entrepreneur. I choose to put myself out there. I choose to be, I choose to learn my lessons along the way versus I have to do this work today. I have to go to the office.
Mm.
You don't really have to do anything, except really, if you want to live, you have to eat, and you have
Right.
to sleep,
Right.
and you have to take care of your bodily functions, right? But you don't have to, if you don't want, you don't have to do that either.
Right.
because and there'll be a consequence, but it's like you don't have to pay taxes, but there's a consequence. If
Right.
you choose to pay taxes, that's a very different energy.
Right.
Like I mean, even that's like a simple thing. Like I choose to pay my bills every month with joy because I appreciate the service that has been provided for me
Mm.
versus poo poo the service that I'm now paying for, right?
Right.
And these are just simple things, but it's stuff that actually gets mired in our body, mind, and spirit. It's energy that we then perpetuate. And there's a way in which we can lighten our load by changing our language. And I
Yep.
really think it's so powerful and it's again, it's simple and may not always be our default, or it may not always be easy, but we can choose ease, we can choose joy, we can choose health,
Hmm.
and we can choose these things. We can choose, if you're an entrepreneur, amen, that's an amazing choice.
Right.
What else do you want to choose around that? I choose to be grateful today. I choose to be open to the possibilities. I choose to connect with 3 or more people versus I have to connect with 3 or more people. I
Yep.
have to be grateful today. I have to do, it's like,
Yep.
no, let's like alleviate that stuff.
Wow. 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 This is incredible. I mean, I feel like we could, go on here for another hour, but we're getting to the end of our time, and so I definitely need to start sending you the correspondence now, begging you to come back for a part 2 and a part 3. But I'm always curious. I love to ask leaders, especially in your type of role. What have you found to be what? How do I word it? Some encouragement, so we've got leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals listening who are trying to figure out how I can, kind of get this kind of life that you're talking about in your book or accomplish this sort of thing. And I know you do a lot of coaching with leaders. Why is, having a coach? What can a coach do that kind of helps you bust through some of those barriers and helps you experience, that life that you've been dreaming of?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question. That's a great question. Having a coach is like having a trainer at the gym. It's about really having that support and that accountability, but it's also getting some tools and exercises that you may not have known that you needed or
Mm.
wanted. And it's like people come into the gym with a goal, and then with a good trainer, you're really planning together what that looks like and
Mm.
the milestones to meet
Yep.
and the vision that you have and the why behind it. And that's what I do as a coach. It's not just about like the next 3 months. It's really about, what does your 10-year vision look like? What
Mm.
is happening in your life 10 years from now? How does that feel? What have you chosen that has led you to this moment? And then based on that 10-year vision, we think about it in terms of 5 years, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, so that we then create actual goals to meet the vision. And so having the coach is really about, it's about having someone be witness to you. It's about having a partner who's going to ask the right questions to help
Oof.
you act that inner knowing.
Yep.
It's about, a good coach knows that the client is the expert of the client. So I don't come in, even though I might have had a, an experience that is relatable, or we might have done similar things. I am not you and you are not me. So I come to the table knowing you are the expert of you. You have an inner blueprint.
Hmm.
There is something seeking to emerge from you. There's an acorn that wants to grow into the oak tree. And we get to kind of look at what that is and invite it to start sprouting and grow it and meet your needs along the way. And also really understand and unpack and navigate when those old stories or those old parts of us are hijacking the head of the table that are not in service to that vision and that
Mm.
and those results. And so it's
Wow.
about, I look at it like in a minimum of a 3 month engagement, which for my individual clients, it's a minimum of 3 months. And for my executive coaching clients, it's usually 6 months or more.
Yeah. Yep.
And and really, I look at it for in those first 3 months, it's like the setup. What do you want? Why do you want it? What are we creating? The second month is about all the gremlins that show up, all the
Mm.
limiting beliefs, all that which is in the way. And then the third month is about the integration of all of it and really getting on the path to
Wow.
success in the way that you want it to be.
Wow. Well, I absolutely love that. Thank you for that clarity. And again, just thank you for your time today. I mean, I really do say it genuinely. I feel like you've given us some masterclass type material here. Before I let you
Thank you.
go, I'd like to just do some rapid fire questions. Our audience can kind of keep getting to know you. So I know
Yeah.
you had, a lot of time in the TV entertainment world. So just curious if you can answer it. Did you have any favorite actors or shows or movies or moments, that you worked on or were a part of?
Oh, you're going to ask me to name my favorite child? um, I will say this. I worked with amazing people. I worked with Jennifer Love Hewitt. I worked with Mary Louise Parker. I worked with
Wow.
Laura Prepon. I worked with Mario Lopez. I worked with Mark Consuelos. And I worked with I worked with really amazing humans. And
Yeah.
I had an extraordinary experience with all of them as creators, as artists, as
Yep.
actors, as people. And I also worked with an amazing woman named Kari Skoglund,
Mm.
who directed one of my movies that was a female driven. It was a female driven movie. It was written by a female. It was a thriller. It was awesome.
Mm.
And Kari directed that movie, and Kari is now up to direct. She is now directing Gal Gadot in the next Wonder Woman movie, and has just soared. And she will tell you she also became a client of mine,
Wow.
and so I have been very, very, very humbled and blessed to call her a friend and a client now.
Mm.
And she wrote the foreword to my book and just
Ah.
kind of talked about how we helped her to break through the glass ceiling as a female director in that world. So.
Wow. That's just amazing. I love it. Okay, another question. Is there a podcast, a YouTube channel that you enjoy, either guilty pleasure or, a growth one that this is my go-to, really challenges me, or just I enjoy it?
You know, I hate to admit, even though I did a podcast too called Permission to Choose. That was, I did 36 episodes. It was on a while ago. I might be doing a new one that that's going to be different. It's going to be coaching people.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I love that.
I dabble. I don't commit. I'm more into reading. After I wrote my book, I started reading fiction, and
Mm.
that's kind of been my escape and
Yes.
I took a break from any self-help for a while.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, living in New York City, is there a favorite season that you have that where New York City is just the best?
I mean, I think spring and fall.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I love New York City every single day of my life. I feel it is like one of my true loves. I feel so lucky to live here. I'm a huge New York fan. I
I
love
love
it.
it. I
So
love it.
I love it. I love all seasons.
Well, I'm in Tampa, and so the Yankees spring training facility is about 20 minutes from here. So,
Ah,
love being able to go. Last spring, sat and was about 10 feet from Aaron Judge, and just sort of looked up the entire time because he is
oh,
one massive human being. So,
that's so cool.
I
That's
love
great.
it.
No, I'm more of a tennis person. I'm getting ready
Okay.
to go to the U.S. Open and watch
Wow. Oh, that's
some.
exciting.
Although my guy's not there right now. I'm a Rafa fan, but
Okay.
he's not. He's injured. So,
Oh,
but I'll go and
well,
support.
thank you again for joining us, Steph. I mean, this was just incredible. I mean, just brilliant. And I would love to know before we let you go, where can we send, our listeners to find you and all the information about what you do online?
So the book is available anywhere you buy books online. What I would though encourage you to do is to go to my website, and you can click the link on there. But if you go to the if you just go to stefziev.com, there's a order and receive your free gifts. If you go to that page, you'll be able to buy everything, at Amazon or Books a Million or Bookshop or wherever. But then come back to that order page and put in your receipt number and your email, and then I have
Ah,
3 gifts that I will send you immediately. One of which is one of which is a live Q&A that I did with people who read the book, and it's really robust and a really helpful conversation that will be additive to
Oh,
your experience of the book. So I would love your people to buy the book and then come back and immediately get their free gifts. And if you're interested in my services, I do offer a free consultation, and people are welcome to reach out to me, also via my website or my email, which I can give you and we can put in the information.
love it.
And it's just stef@stefziev.com.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to provide that.
Well, perfect. Thank you again. And yeah, we will definitely put information for the book and your website and all that information in the show notes. And thank you again for your time and for being on the podcast. What a great conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you to our listeners for joining us on the Speak with People podcast. My goodness, every single week is just amazing. We are so honored and blessed to have amazing leaders like Stef on the podcast. I just wanted to remind you, it means the world when you join our podcast community by leaving a review. So if you just go to Apple Podcasts and you type in Speak with People, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that little 5-star thing. Give us, what you think you're experiencing, and then please consider writing a review. It really does help the algorithms and more people to help find us. Thanks again for being a part. Hopefully you were challenged today to elevate the importance and practice of healthy communication in your life and leadership. And my hope is that you will speak with people and not at them. We will see you next week.